Hey Brad, I hope that everything is fine, and it's time for your next personal video. And today we are going to have a look at the French defense that you have played, and you have played with the black pieces, and you told me that this is the first time that you have played with the isolated pawn, so it's quite understandable that you didn't really understand all the subtleties of the position. But the rising position, this one is quite a theoretical one. It was actually your opponent who first surprised you in this situation by playing the move rook e1. Rook e1 is quite a rare move, even though it might be a part of white's plan in this situation. They don't usually play it in this situation. They first go knight b3. This is more flexible. In fact, Mikhail Butvini, who played this with the black pieces, he showed the right plan, what white should try to do in this situation. After knight b3, white is asking his opponent, where exactly are you going with this bishop? And if it goes on b6, like his opponent Boleslavsky did, Butvini came up with the right plan. He tried to trade the dark squared bishops with the move bishop e3. Okay, this was the first attempt, and it wasn't that great because he didn't put the rook on e1 yet, and after bishop takes e3 and pawn takes e3, he also had a weakness of his own. But overall, this plan became the standard idea for these situations, and here rook e1 makes perfect sense, followed by bishop e3. So in that case, the rook would be placed nicely on e1, as it will support them with bishop e3, trading the bishops. If you drop the bishop back here on d6 instead of that, then white is not obliged to go rook e1, and he can go for bishop g5 followed by bishop h4 and bishop g3. This is what white usually does in this situation, once again trying to trade these two bishops. Why? Well, obviously he wants to get a very strong grip of the d4 square, which is a dark one, and eventually he tries to trade as many pieces as possible. Also, by trading the bishop, he is more or less limiting the attacking potential of his opponent. As you know that with the isolated pawn, you want to play for the attack, and he's leaving the potentially bad bishop on the board. All of these, they're pretty clear, I believe. And we are moving back to the game where rook e1 was played. Not a bad move itself, and it was, by the way, played even by, I think, Ivanchuk played like that against Yusupov. But after knight b3, bishop d6, he chose the move bishop g5, which is more in the spirit of the position. Again, probably with the same idea, but also making it a little bit uncomfortable for black, not giving him a chance to jump easily with the knight on f5 and to create counterplay. Even though this is stronger, black is still doing fine after bishop g4. On the bishop h4, he played rook e8, bishop g3, he traded, and after queen b6, he did fine. His idea was, if the bishop steps back, say on d3, like it was in the game Sokolov against Vaganyan, to seek this counterplay a5 and eventually a4. The idea is a4 to reach that pawn. He will be happy to see the move a4, as after that c3 will leave the generally desirable move c3 will leave these pieces a bit loose. And after bishop h7, king f8, black simply sacrificed the pawn on h7, but in return he got very nice initiative. This pawn is particularly hanging, this one is also hanging, and he had very good play. This is from the match Sokolov against Vaganyan. While white has also played here a4, to which he came up with Novotny Yusupov, the move h6. Rook e8 was also quite playable, and he managed to hold this later. As far as I remember, you can check the game and you will understand how to play in this situation too. So you see that some of the plans, some of the things that happen in this game are quite similar to what happened in your game. Your opponent played the less ambitious move bishop e3, especially taking into account the fact that he didn't go here bishop c5. So basically he lost tempo, bishop e3 and bishop d2. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Instead of that, bishop c5 is being played. And after this, it seems like white should be doing fine, and he is doing fine, but in reality black is also doing quite okay after queen b6, as he's trading this important bishop. And after that, white couldn't really get very good control of the d4 and c5 squares, because he was having problems with his pawn on c2, and later black managed to trade the rooks. I advise you to have a look at this game, where black carefully defended He didn't have great chances to play for the win, but this is one typical scenario. If you don't have the attack on the king side, then you can switch to this slow but careful defense. Now moving back to your game, bishop d2 was a new move. It's a novelty. You reacted, I believe, well. But here the move d4 in your first question, if it was premature, the answer is unfortunately yes. It is premature, you're simply losing a pawn. Now, you could have tried something like a6, not fearing bishop c6 here wouldn't make any sense at all, because now bishop a5 is not winning anything, so he just gave up the light squared bishop for nothing. Most likely white will proceed with bishop to f1, then you can play bishop d7, connect the rooks. Now have to be careful about that pawn, so maybe you will have to defend it with bishop e6. But since knight d4 is not yet in the air as this pawn is hanging, I'll say the other knight, if it goes there, you would take it, and again he cannot recapture with the knight as this pawn is hanging. This means that your position is more or less playable. Say if he does, instead of jumping with the knight on d4, if he does something like g3, you're connecting the rooks. There are plenty of pieces on the board. Your pawn on d5 would be okay. Nobody's going to take it, and overall you would be doing perfectly fine. While d4 just lost the pawn. And after bishop c6 and bishop a5, at this stage of the game your opponent played very well, and he managed to put his pieces in a very nice way, and queen h3 was in particular very good. He weakened you badly, and he was just one step away from the win. A clear win would have been, instead of knight e4 here, if he had gone queen h4. Very strong move. First of all, he's not afraid that you will capture on g5, because after that you will get checkmated on the dark squares easily. Like that, or like that. Also this pawn is hanging. So in a situation in which he is conducting an attack, you cannot survive the opposite colored bishops. On the other hand, after queen h4, it's very hard to see a move for you. And yeah, this bishop is quite loose. Maybe he wants to chase it away, or maybe simply he wants to go rook d7. This is the simplest threat, as now you don't have bishop c8, any skewers, the queen is away. Rook d7 will prepare the threat, rook b7 will create the threat, rook b7 and queen f4. And finally, if you move away the bishop, say on e5, rather than taking the knight on g5, there is a very nice tactical justification of the move queen h4. This is the beautiful move knight f7. And here we see if you take with the rook, there is rook d8 coming, which was one of the reasons behind the move queen to h4. And if you take with the king instead, well then check in queen e7, this is going to be checkmate. It's inevitable, simply queen h7. These threats on the 7th rank cannot be stopped. So that was the moment in which he could have won. He played knight e4, which is also a natural move, but it gives you a chance to go into an endgame after that. Probably bishop c3 was also a little bit premature. But the answer of your next question, question number 2, was the trade of the rooks your best chance? Definitely it was the best chance. Yes, you did well trading the rooks. This rook was too active. It was creating checkmating threats on the 8th rank together with the queen. It was attacking that pawn on f7. So if you want to survive, yes, you need to trade the rooks. And the good thing here is that you're reaching a queen endgame, and queen endgame you always have very reasonable chances of making a draw. Usually they're connected with two things. One is vulnerable king, like it was in that case, or strong passer, distant passer, pawn which is protected by a queen. If it is fast enough, your opponent would be forced to do perpetual check, or you can force perpetual check yourself if this king is weak. He in particular, after the move f4, which was a bad move, he should have played h3, and after this check to try to play like that. But even in that case, I believe that you will be having very reasonable chances of making a draw. Or also queen d2 was a move instead of queen f6. But the move f4 made things even easier for you, as now the king is very weak. But here, rather than queen d5, I will suggest another move for you and another way for you to play. h4. You came to this move a little bit later, but that was the right moment to do it. With the pawn on h4, you're taking away the heir of this king, first of all. But also, you are ready to push it even further, in case of a need, like you did in the game. And you're trying to give a hook for your queen, somehow, to torture this king. In particular, if he tries to defend with a move like h3, and to hide the king on h2, then thanks to this hook here, you can always think about perpetual check, so this is one idea. Another idea, say here in this line, is to use it again as a perpetual check hook. That was the cleanest road probably for the draw, but the way that you played was also quite okay. Queen d5, b3 and queen e4, centralizing the queen makes a lot of sense, and h4 here is not too late. On the contrary, it's coming just in time. He took h3. Your question was if this is a draw. My answer is I believe yes, it's a draw. Again, priority in situations like that is the activity of the queen, but the activity depends on the weakness of the opponent's king. Obviously, the opponent's king is not safe, so you have plenty of perpetual check ideas, checkmate ideas even, and taking the h2 pawn idea. And in that case too, your pawn is there to use the second defensive plan, to put it this way, to create a strong passer which is defended by a queen. I especially like this move here. By the way, just to mention queen h3, I'm sure you saw it, but this was perpetually immediately, as the king cannot go anywhere. While queen c3 check, king h7, and a5, I especially like the move a5, which is not giving him a chance to push the pawns on the queen side and to work with the queen from the square where it is. Just here, however, you're missing the clear-cut draw. You played queen h1 one move too early. If you have started with the move f5, then you are not letting this king a chance to escape, and it will end in a perpetual check most likely. Say, for example, c4, you just give a check and check and check. You're using that pawn as another hook to give a chance to the queen to give the checks and to do the perpetual check. If in this line, instead of c4, if he tries something like, here after f5, if he tries queen e2 instead of that, again, there is no escape. You do the check and the check and the check. So there is no escape on this side neither on that side, nor on the other side, and the queen is very, very well centralized, and your opponent has no chance of escaping from the perpetual check. So see here, if he goes in this direction, you just take the pawn. Now you force him sooner or later to deliver perpetual check, as that pawn is too dangerous. And queen h1 actually led to trouble for you, because he managed to escape now. He managed to do this maneuver, and the king is going into safety. You still might draw this one, but the other one was immediate draw. Now we come to question number 4. You're saying that king h6 was a mistake, as you were caught in the net where you didn't see queen d8 and the exchanges of the queens and the winning pawn endgame. As we will see, the mistake is coming a little bit later. Don't worry about that. It's not yet a mistake, although king g8 is also a draw. If you keep the king in this direction, yes, sooner or later he will take this one, but you will take on h2. Now the question is he fast enough with this pawn to at least trade that pawn? The answer is no, you're faster, and he will have to deliver some perpetual check. This is the last moment in which he can deliver the perpetual check, because if he promotes to a queen himself, we have another typical situation where the first one to start the checks is usually winning, and since this is you, it's going to be checkmate. The attacking potential of the two queens is enormous. We know, we have studied with you that the rook and the queen are also quite deadly attackers, but two queens just unstoppable. So that was a draw, but king h6 is also a draw. What you didn't see was actually not easy to see. You had another way of delivering the draw, of making a draw in this situation after the check and the check. Now, the real mistake is the move king h6, after which you fell into this checkmate net. And indeed, here, if it wasn't the mouse slip, if he had given the check and king c1, you were losing. However, moving back to that situation, we were looking at two ways of making draw in the queen endgames, and we forgot the third way. Two ways to take the pawn and to force him to do perpetual check or to do perpetual check ourselves. There is a third way, and it's called stalemate. The move king h8 was the draw, as this queen after queen g6 is way too close to your king, and you can simply capture on c2. So that would have been a very, very nice finish where the game ends in a stalemate. It's very unusual, it's very beautiful at the same time, and it's a pity that you missed it, but maybe it was for good because you won the game anyway. So I guess that this would have been the logical outcome of the game, the nice one. To summarize your questions and the things that we were discussing, first of all, counterplay, you should be looking by bringing the rooks into the center, obviously, and then jumping with the knights on e4 and c4 if possible. The advance of the pawn is also one of your ideas. Kingside attack, of course, whenever you can. And then if you're in a bad situation where you're pawn down, you did the right thing, you went into queen endgame, rook endgame. These are endgames in which you can compensate for the extra pawn thanks to the activity of your pieces. You cannot do the same in pure light endgames or pawn endgames, so that's why heavy pieces, those in which there is a lot of energy in the pieces, the remaining pieces, and they have this ability of compensating. You did great pushing the h-pawn. Also, you gave a hook, you gave a potential passer, you missed a couple of moments where you could have made an eastern draw, and you missed this one, but next time you're not going to miss any of those. So I will wish you good luck for the next games, and I'll be waiting impatiently the next game too. I'll see you.